get up and move on. You're not a tree. It might have been a shitty circumstance, but it doesn't mean it's a shitty life. I kind of used that as an opportunity. I used that bad circumstance as an opportunity what to be hopeful for. My mum and I have packed 8-9 years of our lives in 2 big suitcases. We had 40 pounds between us, and we were like, that's it, we're leaving. And we never looked. If it's out of your hands, then it should be out of your mind as well. We were just happy. I was personally very happy that we just left it. I had to share my room with my mother, and I was 17. Like, no one wants to share a room when you're 17, 18 with your mother. That's like a nightmare for anyone at my age. But I was just so happy. There's nothing to be ashamed of. What has happened to you is nothing to be ashamed of. It's not like you have imposed it on yourself. It's not like you have created this for yourself. Even if you did, so what? You know, you're the ones, right? It's your life. It's in your hands to kind of create and shape whatever you want out of it.
What's the lowest point in your life, and how being intuitive helped you to come out from that situation?
I'm just choosing which low point.
Everybody, welcome to the Success Stories with Mukadas. Before getting into this episode, I just wanted to take a moment and say a huge thank you, because I've achieved my first milestone of 1,000 subscribers, and without you, I cannot achieve this. So thank you so much. But this is just the first stage, and my goal is to achieve 1 million subscribers by next May. My goal is to empower people to live a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life. Not just by sharing inspiring stories, but help you to equip with the right tool and the questions that you can ask yourself to live a fulfilling life. So I cannot wait to start this conversation with Kamila today, who is the speaker, cultural advocate, and artist who I respect a lot. And please let me introduce Kamila. Hi, Kamila. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. And yeah, I be very honest. And first time I came across you on Instagram, and I really inspired by your story, where you were telling about like how you combat your cancer and domestic abuse, and like I feel like you have such a great energy. And it was probably more than a year ago, but I can still remember. So when I was like searching for some podcast guests, and I remember you. Oh, I wanted to be friends with Camila, and yeah, I wanted to learn more about you and your journey. Can you tell us a bit more about like that journey, how you overcame those?
It's one of my favorite things ever. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me and being so nice and warm and welcoming. Um, I don't know where to start, to be honest. I mentioned many, many times that I moved to London when I was 11 years old as a kid with my mom and my brother. And coming from Uzbekistan, landlocked country, where a country no one has ever heard of before, and I never been outside of Uzbekistan before either, before moving to London. So it was a little bit traumatic to be exposed to not just a new country, but also so many accents, so many different accents. You're learning English in a certain way, and then you come to London, UK, and it's a different kind of accent. But yeah, that was a hiccup already, that everyone kind of overcomes as an immigrant. But all the things that have happened after that as a teenager, that's where, um, that's what I mostly talk about and advocate, and not scared to talk about my traumas. Yeah, so as you mentioned, at 17, I was diagnosed with a pancreatic tumor, and I was it took me a while to be diagnosed. I started to feel all the symptoms when I was 16, and then at 17, I was diagnosed, and I was taken to intensive care unit, and I was in intensive care units in and out for the past 6 months until I was diagnosed. Then once I was diagnosed, it was oncology-based cancer. I had several surgeries before my big one, because I had internal bleeding, and it was very, very heavy, so I was between life and death quite often. Then after that, whilst I was staying in hospital, I've learned that my mum has been going through physical domestic violence and abuse from her husband, my stepdad. And it was something that we were going through together, but it was never physical to the point that I was genuinely scared for my mother because she will be coming to the hospital to visit me with bruises on her hands, like
Oh
big
no.
bruises. And she would always come up with the reason, with an excuse. And my mother works with children, so I didn't think much of it. But when I was taken from a hospital back home to recover, that's when I thought, okay, that's it. I've already went through something traumatic. I don't want to continue going through that. There needs to be a change.
Mm.
Um, so after that, my mom and I have packed, it must have been what, 8, 9 years of our lives in 2 big suitcases. We had £40 between us, and we were like, that's it, we're leaving.
Yeah.
And we never looked back. And
Oh.
yeah, and we stayed in a refuge for women, and we were helped by the charity, which I'm very like, internally grateful for. And yeah, the rest is history.
Oh, thank you so much for being very vulnerable and share your story. And you mentioned that now you don't feel much emotion. Like when you talk about it, you are okay to share your story. And what encourages you or what give you power to share your story?
Um, I think, to be absolutely honest, the fact that I was able to digest it on my own before I was diagnosed, I knew what it was, and it was the strangest thing, and I was processing it, and I've cried because I was scared mostly. It wasn't self-pity, it wasn't, why me, I'm really young. It's the type of tumor that occurs in someone who's at a certain age. Um, and then once I processed it, even though my parents were like, no, it's not that, you're young, it can't be you. They were in denial until the day I had a surgery, big surgery to remove it. They were
Mm.
in complete denial. They thought I have some kind of big worm inside of me
Oh no.
until the very last day in intensive care unit. I think it's the fact that I was able to digest it on my own and kind of accept it. And, once you accept it and digest it and you say, okay, this is a very shitty thing that is happening. It's no one's fault, not my fault, not my parents' fault, no one's fault. It's just that's what it is. And you digest it, accept it, and you think, okay, what's next? How can I move on from it? Um, if it's out of your hands, then it should be out of your mind as well. That's my mentality of it. And at 17, I tried my best to, um, I was honestly faking it because it's kind of hard to be happy in a hospital where, everything you eat comes out of you anyway. You have very little joys in a hospital,
Yeah, of
especially if
course.
you're sharing like a ward with 6 or 7 different women, um, who also going through something similar. And before I was diagnosed and I was taken to oncology-based hospital, I was in general hospital with women who went through digestive problems as well. And there was different ages, and there was at some point there was a woman next to me who died at
Oh, that's
night, and
very
no one
scary.
knew. And and I only knew because I understood, because during the night she would scream or like she would talk in her sleep. And sometimes there were naughty dreams. So I would wake up and then suddenly I had an amazing uninterrupted sleep in the hospital, and I knew something was up because she didn't speak. And yeah, that's when I realized that she died.
Mm.
But yeah, that's a bit traumatic at 17 years old.
Yeah.
As a kid, there's someone like next to you dead. And yeah, it's hard to be happy and genuinely be like bubbly and positive when you're in those circumstances.
Mm.
So you kind of learn to fake it and just enjoy the little things. And um, I tried my best not to be on social media because, other 17-year-olds were just enjoying their lives, partying, thinking what uni they would go to. So I try not to be on social media. I try to read a lot. I try to draw a lot. My friends were coming over. We were just talking about normal things. We didn't talk about my illness. We didn't talk about my day. We were just talking about normal things. So
Mm.
yeah, I was faking it during that time. But when me and my mom were going through domestic violence and abuse, kind of escaping it, there was not much to kind of, how do I say, like we were just happy. I was personally very happy that we just left it.
Mm.
We just left the situation. We had a house and I had my own room, and suddenly I had to share my room with my mother, and I was 17. Like,
Mm.
no one wants to share a room when you're 17, 18 with your mother. That's like a nightmare for anyone at my age. But I was just so happy. My mom and I would like go to a park, with a coffee, and that's all we could afford at the time. And we were just happy that there is a new chapter. and it was like a fresh breath of air.
Yeah.
And during that time, there's not much that you can kind of be negative about. I mean, there is obviously, a lack of money, what's next, but I kind of use that as an opportunity. I use that bad circumstance as an opportunity of what to be hopeful for.
Mm.
So yeah, that's
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 the
the way of
journey.
digesting. Yeah, that's the way of digesting. I think the answer is it's good for you to digest it and process it in your own time and kind of accept it. Once again, if it's out of your hands, it should be it deserves to be out of your mind as well.
Mm.
But if it is in your mind, then please speak to someone. I had therapy. I went through therapy in school, I went through therapy in college and university. I had someone professional to speak to who didn't use that conversation as a way to find who to blame. She had very good therapists, thankfully, who were asking me questions. Who were saying, well, do you know, why does that trigger you? What does that say? What do you think would have been better? And that helped me to digest a lot of things. I'm not saying I'm not triggered. And out of all the things that have happened, I am triggered. There are a lot of still things that trigger me, but I don't respond in the same way that I used to.
Mm.
So yeah.
Thank you so much. That, of course, it takes some time to heal that kind of traumatic experiences,
Mm.
right? Like, I'm so glad that you had someone to talk to, like therapists, and we need that kind of people who are experienced in healing people, etc. And we are not alone anyway. And
Yeah.
yeah, like I also had a similar experience, but I mean, probably it's similar but not that extent. I always really enjoyed dancing, and I was like, I want to be a very good dancer, and that I'm very passionate about dance, and I had lots of like goal and dream about like how I can dance in the future. Like I had patellar dislocation. It's not once, twice, like it happened like again and again. And one day, like when I was preparing for studying abroad, like IELTS and etc., and I uh, went to mountain with my classmates, and then I fell down, and it happened again. So the doctor told me you need an operation, otherwise you cannot like after 30, 40 years old, now you cannot walk. So
Mm.
you need to stay in bed for at least 6 months. And I was like, I felt very disappointed that time. I was like, I cannot go to school, and I had a dream of studying abroad. Now probably it will be delayed, and I didn't want to delay. And I also think about like I cannot wear high heels, I cannot dance anymore, etc., etc. For a girl, it was like I felt very sad in the first week. I was like just crying. But after that, I read some books and I realized why I feel sad about this. Actually, that book is called Secret. And
Mm.
that book, after that, I started learn how to appreciate. So we took some things for granted.
Yes.
And when we have this kind of experience in tough challenges, and we realize actually just being able to see, just being
Yes.
able to hear,
Yes.
just being able to be next to someone who loves you.
Yeah.
So my mom was taking care of me that time. I went home. So every day I was like being thankful for the most basic things.
Yeah.
And that shaped me today, who I am today, like to be appreciative. And that really helps me to see challenges as an opportunity to grow. And also, yeah, just being grateful for the people, the help, and it really helps. So when I saw your story, I can relate a lot
Yeah.
because you grow from that toughest challenges with this kind of situation, and now you are very bright, and you are doing what you love, and you are sharing your story to help others and make an impact. So can you also share like how your these toughest challenges shaped who you are today?
Oh. Wow. I was a very shy girl. I was a very shy girl. I didn't want to be in the spotlight, being a speaker, like a public speaker, or speaking in front of people was my nightmare, absolute nightmare. Um, I was bullied when I first came to London for the way I speak, for my accent, for the way I pronounce things. So I've learned to speak and have a British accent in such a way that even British people would be questioning where I'm from. And I was able to achieve it within a few years as a schoolgirl. But just to imagine myself speaking in front of people was like the biggest fear of me, you know. Um, and I guess I just can I swear?
Of course.
I just stopped giving a fuck. I just stopped giving a fuck about all my insecurities, all the things that I'm afraid of, all the things that kind of holds me back because I started to understand the bigger message behind what I want to achieve. And the truth is, you won't be able to achieve much unless you're able to speak about it, being completely honest and brutally honest with yourself. There are other people who are watching this or are listening to you, and they will be able to spot out a lie or spot out like a moment of fakeness if you're not being honest with yourself and what you say. So I guess what became very important for me is just to speak out about what has happened to me and kind of talk about it in a way that it's not something that should be holding you back. Especially in our communities, you know, in Uyghur community and Uzbek community, if you talk about the things that have happened to you, like especially as a girl, the tumor and I was sick and my unfortunately my mother has married a man who wasn't very nice to us and my stepdad wasn't nice. You know, usually in our communities, people say you should hush about these things. It's a taboo to talk about this. You won't be able to successfully get married. That might stop you from achieving A, B, C in your career. They kind of want to put you in this cage, in this bubble. So when I kind of talk about this, not only am I breaking that bubble for my own self, because in in honesty, my parents did say, "Are you sure you want to talk about this?" But they were not worried about what others might say. They were worried about me and what I might receive, the kind of comments I might receive, and kind of um like how I will be able to handle it. But I didn't care. I was like, you know what? There are other people out there who might be going through this. And when I was going through this, I didn't really know anyone else at my age who was going through it. Um, but after my first podcast or my second podcast, I received so many messages from girls, especially from my community, from those from Uzbekistan who went through something similar, and they've shared it with me, and they said, I was never able to talk about this, so it's really refreshing that you are talking about this. I'm so grateful that you are. I'm still too scared to talk about this out loud to my audience or to my people because some of them are bloggers too. But one day I might, and I always tell them there's nothing to be ashamed of. What has happened to you is nothing to be ashamed of. It's not like you have imposed it on yourself. It's not like you have created this for yourself. Even if you did, so what? You know, you're the ones, right? Um, it's your life. It's in your hands to kind of create and shape whatever you want out of it. It might have been a shitty circumstance, but it doesn't mean it's a shitty life.
Of course, yeah.
It's just a small little aspect of what else, of something that is much bigger out there. So in my case, I think I've used my shitty things as opportunities, and I have. I'm not ashamed of saying it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah,
So
thank you
yeah,
so much. Yeah, it's not easy to like have that courage to talk about it, but you overcame it, and it's not your fault, as you mentioned. And like it depends, like how you see the situation. Do you see this as an opportunity to grow and like because you already overcame it and you can talk about and people who had a similar experience, they can be inspired by your journey and they are not alone neither and they don't need to blame the situation but trying to find a way to overcome it. So I think a lot of people find it very helpful, and yeah, they feel that they are not alone and they can overcome it as well. So I am also very interested to talk about your art because you are an artist and you have amazing art.
Thank you.
And I want to know more about the stories behind your art.
Um, I started drawing since I was 7 years old, and I come from a family of architects, so it was kind of a natural flow. And my father have noticed that I'm very keen on drawing. I draw all the time, so he got me a lot of teachers in Uzbekistan whilst we were living in Uzbekistan to teach me about different techniques, watercolors, acrylics, pencils, whatever. And then every time I was coming over from London to Uzbekistan whilst immigrated, he was looking at my drawings, and for one of the drawings, I had an art exam for GCSEs or A levels, and it was probably impressionism that I was doing and studying. And my dad was like, I do not understand your artwork. Like, I'm trying to be open-minded, but I do not understand it. What does it mean? And I told him about, Dad, this, Van Gogh, Dali, whatever. He was like, okay, but, you know, in their cases, there was still something that I could understand, even though I'm an Uzbek guy, from Uzbekistan. You need to express your way and find a way to express love or emotions like hate or even Allah, which is something that isn't something that you can express or something that you can draw because, Allah is neither man or woman. But you need to find a way to kind of connect yourself to emotions and express it and draw it. And that's when I kind of started building this up within me and expressing myself more through my art drawings. I'll be honest, a lot of them are not very pretty, especially during my time in hospital. They were very dark, very black and white, and I will send it to you if you like, just to see the contrast between now and then. But it was my way of expressing. It was the only way for me to express. It was me and my pencil and paper, a piece of paper. And I'm very grateful for it. And a lot of time when doctors were coming over to see it, they will be like, oh, what's the drawing of the day? So it was always a way to kind of talk about something else apart from my condition. Um, but yes, the drawings that I draw today are by far more colorful, by far more bright, by far more interesting, I
As
guess.
yourself now.
Thank you.
Very
Very
bright,
much.
of course.
Um, I found a way to express different steps of my life. So 3 years ago, after the passing of my Bobby John, my grandma, I started to, thank you. She is restful now. She's in peace. She lived a very long life. Um, I started to express my guilt for not being able to speak Uzbek properly with her, especially. And I started to kind of digest and express my cultural, I guess my third culture kid syndrome. Because at the end of the day, I'm half Russian, half Uzbek, who was growing up in UK. So I have three cultures in me, British, Uzbek, and Russian. Whether I want to avoid it or not, that's natural aspect, natural being of me. So I had a cultural crisis, which I was expressing through my artwork, and I started to kind of direct it and divert it through Uzbek, Uyghur, Central Asian motifs. And I started to attract even more people, different audience, diaspora, people who were raised in West, people who were born in West, people who are married to Uzbeks and Uyghurs and want to get to know their husbands and spouses' cultures, which is amazing because I didn't know my artwork and my cultural crisis and identity crisis can do that. So for artwork, I started to connect to people, and eventually I started to even get proposals, like work proposals. At the time, I was working in a company. I had a corporate job, and suddenly I get more proposals to be in creator world, in fashion world, in tourism and culture, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, like because you have very interesting background. So is your mom Uzbek and dad is Russian?
No, opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah, so my mother is Russian, who was born and raised in Uzbekistan, just like her grandma. Um, her mom, sorry, and her grandma and her grandparents are the ones who have immigrated from Russia. They actually lived in Samarkand at first, in Uzbekistan, and then they moved to Tashkent. And my father's from Fergana Valley. So yeah.
I see. How this kind of background shapes your art? Do you want to talk more about it?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm confused, so my art is confusing. So I guess I was raised in a household where we were open-minded in a way that my mother, she became a Christian, like Orthodox in her 30s, mid-30s, and we were always celebrating Easter. So we always had something to celebrate at home. We had Easter, we had Eid Bayram, we had Ramadan, we had a mixture of Bayrams and holidays to celebrate, and there was always a feast. And my parents were just down to eat and to gather people, and it was the most amazing experience as a little kid because you're always surrounded by people. Um, but you have a table full of dishes. So we had Russian dishes, then we had Uzbek dishes, and then we had something Uyghur, and then we had something Korean because there's a huge Korean diaspora in Tashkent. And then we had our Azerbaijani baklava, so pastry. So it was a mixture of everything on the table, and you don't know what belongs to whom. So you just accept it and eat it and just enjoy it. And I guess that kind of shaped me to be open-minded, and be open to cultures. And that curiosity towards cultures has what has risen my job and what I do now and where I am right now.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Is there any like project that you share that excited you the most?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I guess recently I've been working for over a year with Ambassador of Culture and Tourism of Uzbekistan to the UK. And I've been her colleague, and she has given me this amazing opportunity to write and to travel and write. And I'm someone who is down for extreme sports all the time. So I've skydived, I've jumped from the mountains, but at the same time, I'm also down to know the locals. I love locals. Don't put me in a bougie hotel. Put me with the locals, and I'll write the most amazing article out there. So she's given me an opportunity to travel to Georgia at the beginning of this year, to the ski resort, to the mountains, and it was amazing. It was only me, so it was very VIP. There was a lot of attention on me. Usually it's a tour of journalists that you travel to a different country. But this time it was just me and a tour guide who was taking me everywhere. And I told him, don't take me to big, like expensive restaurants, take me to the locals. I wanna know how to make khinkali, which is dumplings, Georgian dumplings, up by hand. Bring me to the aunties, take me to the aunties. And he did. He got me, he put me to a local restaurant and put me with the aunties who taught me how to make khinkali up by hand. And I wrote one of the most amazing articles, my first articles for tourism.
Oh wow.
And after that, I traveled to Armenia for 10 days with journalists at this time, with the group. And that was also very hectic, but very, very fun. And I got to know so many different journalists from different points of the world in Armenia. And because I was the only one who spoke Russian in that group, I was able to kind of see the country from different point of views, not just the British journalist who came to write about Armenia, but also someone from the Soviet Union who understands different elements. I guess that was very fun.
Yeah, definitely. Because people there speak Russian as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they
It
do.
really can connect with them.
Yeah.
That made things easier.
Yes, exactly, it did. It was very, very fun. I learned how to make Armenian pasta. We were taken to villages. At some point, we were taken on a border as well with Azerbaijan, which were both scary and interesting. There was a beautiful nature in Armenia, and I wrote articles about Armenia as well, which was very fun because working with people and just getting to know the culture is it's an aspect which I find very, very interesting to me, and it's something very personal. It's nothing to do with artwork, but it is to do with that aspect of me, why I started to draw certain pieces in my artwork, and it's get to know myself. And once you get to know yourself, it's easy to understand the people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's I'm connecting like your past experience with this kind of very exciting project, which excites you and also provide value like to your like clients, for example. I'm thinking like, is it because you were able to talk about your story and it helped you to build your personal brand, about your art, about your background? Like, do you think there is a very good connection between getting this kind of project and also your background and
Oh,
personal brand?
100%, yeah, 100%. The fact that I was able to yap on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, has given me those opportunities because I've connected with influencers, I've connected with people who also like to yap and get opportunities out of it. Um, I guess I started to talk about culture 2, 3 years ago, and then gradually I was being invited by my friends who work in sustainable fashion and in culture and tourism to bring me into their projects at first. And then suddenly I was getting requests from photographers or brands, Uzbek brands who are based in UK, like, hey, Cami, let's create a photo shoot for a campaign. Like we have this upcoming new season with our clothing. We just wonder if you'll be able to be an eye director for it. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. So I've created like an interesting ideas to shoot and how to shoot, and I've connected with Uzbek photographer that are very close to my heart, Aziza, who is who's easy to work with as well, who helped me shape ideas and I've worked hand in hand with. And after that project, it kind of evolved to another project where I was able to connect it to Kurdish culture and Uyghur cultures. And I also had a photo shoot in a photo studio where I was also an art director for a book about dancing actually, and of Central Asia and the Silk Road. Um, and after that, because I post about it on social media all the time, and people I work with, so the models I was inviting to the photo shoots are all my friends.
Oh, yeah.
So they were also posting about it, and the photographers and the brands. So I started to, and the videos started getting viral. Some of the videos were getting very viral because I was also like sending it to my friends who were influencers, like, hey guys, this is one of my first projects. What do you think? And they loved it, and they were posting it on their socials. So through the power of social media and power of your people who support you, I started to gain attention from others. So I started to get attention from brands in Uzbekistan. So on my recent trip back home, I was connected to different brands who reached out to me and said, hey, here's an idea, one, and another brand. Like, hey, Kami, what do you think about doing this in London? And someone else contacted me and was like, hey, we need to meet, like, let's discuss ABCD. And that's all thanks to social media. Because I was able to yap and talk about it, and somehow that connected different like-minded and like-hearted people,
Yeah,
thankfully.
thanks for sharing. Yeah, I totally believe in that because I wouldn't be able to remember that even after like several years, right? Like because you posted maybe 2 years ago and then I wished once
Uh-huh.
and it really touched my heart. And I remember that if you accepted your situation and your experience and you are willing to share, and that really touch people's heart, like if there is an advice for people that you can give who are struggling or who are like experiencing very tough challenges in their life, what it would be?
Um, I'll be absolutely honest, when I was going through tumor, I've shared it obviously with my friends and my family knew. And I was offered therapy, and I was even offered art therapy as well in hospital, but I was too weak and too sick to kind of be among the group that I don't know and kind of go through that. But when I was going through domestic violence and abuse, and we left that household and that situation, um, I was in college, and the police and authorities naturally contacted the college and said, there's this girl who's going through this, a student, our student, please look out for her. The security knew who I was, my face, so they looked out to make sure my stepdad or anyone dangerous is not with me, kind of thing, once I leave the premises or enter the premises. But inside the college as well, I was told to go to speak to an advisor, and she put me through therapy, so I was able to speak to a therapist about it, but I wasn't able to share with anyone. Like all my friends didn't know, or people I made friends with inside the college also didn't know what I'm going through. And it was really hard to kind of like hide because they were saying, where do you live? You know, do you live in a house and stuff? So I was like, yeah, I live with my mom, like in an apartment, in this very small space kind of thing. I wasn't able to share that I was living in a refuge at the time, because they're all coming from like normal families where everything's perfect. So I didn't want them to feel guilty, but also didn't want them to feel as if they need to understand because they won't be able to understand. Um, but once again, that's my part on judging. Maybe they have experienced it and they don't talk about it, you know. But I was only able to speak about this after I went through it and after I started living on my own and everything was going fine. I started going to university and my mum started she got a job as well and everything was going well for her. That's when I was able to kind of share the story. But I think the advice I would give to someone who might be going through something similar or someone who's just going through a very shitty moment in their lives is just to talk to someone. Like in my case, as a therapist, I was able to share not all of the things that I was going through, but I was able to share. Um, and remember that whatever you're going through is not your fault. And sometimes things happen, shitty things happen, and there's no one to blame. You shouldn't be looking who to blame. I still don't blame, um, it, weirdly as it sounds, I don't blame my stepdad. I don't blame my mom at all. I don't blame anyone. It's just if a shitty thing happened, yes, okay. Um, I went through it. I got help. I Googled where to get help actually. Um, and if you look at it that way, it's just a lot easier for you not to hold that burden inside of you and carry on with the life. Otherwise, you'll be making a new step in your life 5, 10, 15 years down the line with that thought inside of you. And if even if you will forget that thought, your body won't. Our bodies carry the trauma. Our bodies carry that feeling of guilt, of sadness, of self-pity, whether you want to hear it or whether you believe it or not, it does. And that kind of forms an illness later on. And I'm a strong believer in that. We're 70%, 80%, 90% of water made of water. I'm not sure if you've seen that experiment
Yeah,
with the rice.
with the rice,
Yeah.
I watched the one with the water. So yes, I also like I had a friend who is like specialized in healing traumatic
Yes.
experiences. Like she also mentioned that if we experience some trauma, we have some pain in different, like everyone has different places. Maybe it's related to the time that you experience and also related to health or relationships. So people have different trauma and it appears in different pain in their body.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, if we heal that kind of emotion, if we go back to that situation and heal it slowly, the pain will go slowly as well. That's what I've learned from her. Did you feel any like, so if you like try to find the part which is painful because of the trauma, like where do you feel the pain? Is it like obvious?
Yes, it was. It was digestive system. So ever since I was a little girl, I always had issues with my stomach, but it was never that bad. But um, every time something bad was happening at home, it would be my stomach that would react. Um, and before I was diagnosed, it was always issues with the stomach. So I was losing lots of weight. I was constantly throwing up and stuff. And only after I went through that and I was diagnosed and we left the circumstances. My issues with the stomach got better. But later on in life, when I was in university, whenever I was stressed out, as soon as I'm stressed out and my blood pressure goes up, stomach reacts instantly. So it was my weak point as a little kid, and then it kind of progressed and processed as an adult. And I started to understand that my weak point is my digestive area, my stomach, and I need to heal it. Whether it's naturally, whether it's, going to therapy, whether it's meditation and relaxing my nervous system, because your nervous system reacts and then suddenly sends signals, your brain sends signals to your weak point. So whether for some people it might be lungs, so they might be going through asthma, for some people it might be digestive system. I know a lot of people from my community as well who um, they have the same issue with their digestive system. So they moved from Uzbekistan or Central Asia to UK or Western countries and they start having digestive system because they don't agree with the oil that they use in the kitchens here or whatever. But later on, they open up that they went through something traumatic similar to trauma.
I hope like doctors would see this and then look into like why it happens in community, like people who came from Uzbekistan and experiencing like who moved to the UK and experiencing this kind of similar trauma. There must be a reason.
There must be a reason. It's something to do with the stomach lining or the acid, or I don't know, there's something that genetics that we don't agree with the Western food. Because it's very interesting in the West, the media says, the nutritionists say, healthy food is, five a day. Your vegetables, your fruits, meat, once or twice a month or whatever. But our 5 a day is meat.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, everything's
Our 5 a day is, all the milk, all the protein through the milk, iron, milk, sour cream, yogurt. It's just a different type of mentalities. What is your 5 a day is. And when you're raised with that kind of 5 a day, where it's heavy, it's meat based, and then you suddenly move to the West, where it's, eat your grains, eat your beans, eat your fruits, your vegetables, and only eat meat like once a month. Your stomach goes through that change, that sudden change, which is very, very sudden, and it's a contrast to your stomach lining. And I think there is a correlation between that, which then your like organism reacts and your immune system reacts straight away. Gradually then it turns into something. I hope no one else experiences this, of course, but it was like that for me. I was a vegetarian in my teenage years. My mother started learning about nutrition and everything else, and she started saying, Kami, maybe, we should eat meat less. And that's when I kind of became gradually vegetarian, pescatarian and a vegetarian. And yeah, maybe that was a result of my sickness. But that's, I think that's like a small basic
huge
reason.
like very contrast, like different kind of lifestyle, like in terms of nutrition, right? If it like suddenly changed to something very different, our body probably react in a different way and probably cannot handle it. And I think it's very interesting things to discover a bit more, like why is that. And nowadays we are hearing a lot of like nutritional advice from people from all over the world. They speak from the experience, they speak from the experiment they've done, and it's like sometimes it's very contrast. Like now it's even like carnivore diet. People are saying that's very good for me, and it's like very misleading for people as well. Probably it works for them, but it doesn't mean it works for everyone. And it works probably for the people in a similar region, or I don't know, just like several people, but it doesn't represent everyone. So we need to understand like what works for us. It's like sometimes it's misleading and we follow it and we forget about where we have come from and how we grew up. But after changing a lot, and we might have bad experience after that, and like kind of emotional eating as well.
Mm.
So I know that you touched upon a little bit about this. Is this something that you are comfortable to talk about?
Yes, of course. I mean, I've noticed after my surgery, my big surgery, my doctor says you can eat whatever you want, but just less, maybe half the portion, but you can eat it frequently. So I started to eat meat, and I started to see and experience revolting emotion. Like my body was rejecting meat after surgery. So unless I drink like digestive enzymes whilst I eat meat, red meat, chicken, whatever it was, I was not digesting it well. It was not going through well inside of me. So I started to understand and be more intuitive to what I eat. Um, and I started noticing the changes in my body as well, which was very strange, you know. I started to gain weight very, very suddenly as well. It might have been more hormones. It might have been, you know, just the fact that I was walking less. But I started to see how I was reacting to it. And only maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I started eating red meat properly. Um, I wasn't even cooking it at home because it was revolting to me, which was very interesting. But yes, and there are other vegetables, more keen on vegetables like root vegetables, you know, because they were the ones who were stopping my stomach acid. And I didn't know that. You know, I was more inclined naturally to eat something that is alkaline, more alkaline, to kind of neutralize the acid within me. Because I just did not want to take tablets anymore. I was sick of tablets. So I wanted to do things naturally. And intuitively, my stomach and what I was craving was doing it for me.
Thank you. So after like having like talking about your past and your experience, and you even noticed that you were growing cancer even before you're diagnosed, and like about the eating habits as well, I noticed that you are a very intuitive person. And like how you practice, do you practice being intuitive in your life, like whether through meditation or some like self-reflection? I think, yeah, I just want to know more about how you practice being intuitive.
Um, it's gonna sound weird, but sometimes I say things and they just end up being true, and my friends freak out and they're like, "You're crazy." They're like, "How did you find out?" And I don't know. I just listen to myself more, I guess, because once you stop caring about others and what others have to say, and you start listening to yourself more and what's right for you, rather than what other thing was right for you, you start listening to your voice as the only voice that is right. So you start trusting it more, and through that, intuition grows. And I cannot pinpoint what it is, and I cannot explain it, but that's the case. I, at some point, I just stopped believing, you know, what others may think was right and wrong. There's no such thing. Only I know what's right and wrong. And I stopped asking for advice. Obviously, when I need someone to talk to when I'm going through something, that's different. You know, I talk to, I release it. I kind of want to share what is inside of me, and so I can kind of let it go. But when it comes to advice, I don't always seek advice from others,
Mm.
unless it's medical or well, with law. um, but yeah, when it comes to life choices and life decisions, then it's something from within me that I listen to more and loudly, and I increase the volume off. And I guess through that, I kind of started to intuitively building myself. But yeah, quite often it happens even at work, like something that I just comes up in my head. And I tell that to my colleague, and they're like, Cami, this is really weird. Like, it's freaking me out. Like, your third eye is like really third eyeing today. But yeah, just I guess that's it.
Yeah, I think we all need to learn how to listen to us more. Now, we don't seek advice from only people, our friends, or our mentor. We like there are so many tools, AI, like we ask AI like how to deal with some situation. And
Yeah.
like there are so many distraction and on social media as well. So sometimes if we only seek advice from others and stop listening to ourselves, we cannot be that intuitive. But if we practice more listen to ourselves, then probably we become more intuitive and make better decisions and choices, which aligns with our goals. What's the lowest point in your life and how being intuitive helped you to come out from that situation?
I'm just choosing which low point.
Maybe the recent one, if you had
Oh,
any.
that's still raw to talk about. Still not ready yet. I'm still digesting it myself. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I guess I guess recently that might have happened to me. I was triggered by something that have happened in the past. I was helping someone who has not faked. I guess they believed that what they went through is something that I went through, and they were seeking help from me, and I believed them. But once, as soon as someone tells me something that, they need help, there is this situation, I don't question, I help. Um, but I started to learn that it was it wasn't what it seemed, and it wasn't what it was. And maybe deep inside of them they convinced themselves that that's what they're going through, to get out of the situation, whether it was a toxic relationship, whatever it was. Um, and I've helped them, and I got triggered by it because it was like, whoa, I went through that, and that was very horrible, and it was very traumatic, and I was able to help my own self through that, and I didn't have anyone around me. And here you are, faking the situation, or, proposing that this is what you're going through, and you are seeking help and kind of not appreciating it and lying about it. It did trigger me, and I guess it's something that to do with not justice, but it's something to do with honesty and the level of honesty that I'm not okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wouldn't say it's a low point, but it was very triggering because I started to re-experience what I went through, and I started to like remember it. And as I've said, I might have digested it to a certain point. There's still things that trigger me. Um, and I guess at that point, I understood that it's not someone that I want to have around my circle and around my close circle, and it's not someone I want to believe in, and I don't see the point of having someone around me that I don't believe in,
Mm-hmm.
and who has different values and different morals and different level of honesty, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, and it has happened. I guess it has happened twice where I've experienced someone who is opposing to be something that they're going through, but it's not. And every time this happens, I start thinking, why does this happen? And what does it teach me?
Mm-hmm.
Why does this trigger me still? Why do I connect it so deeply to myself when it's nothing? It might not be the same situation. So through every shitty little thing that I experience and it triggers me, I learn why it triggers me. As they say, whatever triggers you still says something about you. So when you point one finger, you point three at yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
automatically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I start going within myself and kind of working within myself still.
Mm.
Um, on social media, I might seem that I'm happy, I'm positive, I'm bubbly, and I am. I genuinely am.
Yes.
Um, but unfortunately, like when these things happen to me, it triggers me, and I start to kind of digesting
Mm-hmm.
a little bit even more, and that does heal me.
Yeah, I hope people are like being honest because you are being very honest, and if someone else, if not like truly honest and seeking for like help just for the fake of it, and yeah, it's not nice at all. But you went through it and you're not alone. You're shining bright. You're making a lot of contribution to the society. Whoever see your like Instagram or story or art, they're kind of like appreciative and like admiration kind of feeling. So yeah, it's like not easy, but you overcame it. So that's a huge success.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to talk about this. And for me, success is not only like achieve like billions of like a business materialism.
Yeah.
It's about how we overcome some like tough situation in our life and how we grow from it, and then it's little progress even. And I saw that's huge success in life. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question, of course I want to continue this, but because of the time, and I want to ask like one last question. What kind of legacy you want to leave in this world?
Legacy.
Yeah.
That's it's a very interesting question. A bit of traumatic one. Not traumatic, it's exciting. I guess it's to make whoever is watching this, whoever is going through something, a girl, a boy, doesn't matter, or whatever age you are, it's never too late to start a new life, never too late to step over what has happened to you. It's never too late to take happiness in your own hands. It's never too late to let go of the toxic people or the toxicity that is within you as well. It's never too late to go and grab whatever that you want in life. As long as you're honest with yourself, as long as you're sincere with yourself, you will always attract the same people within you as well. And sometimes you might attract flies. You know, the brighter you shine, sometimes you attract flies as well. But that's okay. That's the natural way of life. That's the natural cycle of life. But yes, I guess the legacy is do not give up. And do not, don't stay low too long. It's okay to stay low, completely okay, but don't stay low too long. Get up and move on. You're not a tree. You're not rooted to one place. You're allowed to walk. And I guess maintaining that mentality is hard, but it's one of the best things that can happen to you because you deserve a good life. I think everyone deserves a good life. Everyone deserves a happy life. So as the more you spread that energy, the more that energy converts into something bigger.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like such as arts, for example.
Yes.
And I hope, people learn from this story, and we are not alone in any situation, so we can just need to go over it. Like,
yeah, as people always think they're alone. What is happening to them is just them. Unfortunately, we're not that special. Unfortunately, experiences have been recycled. As much as we want to think that we're exclusive, we're not. The things that are happening to us are not exclusive. They're not, one of a kind. But yeah, the more you talk about it and the more you're okay with what has happened, you never know what you might attract. So
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for being inviting.
Of course, it's my pleasure to have you here, and I hope your art journey and to be very successful and to be very exciting, and I hope you have amazing experiences in your life. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you
and sharing your stories.
Trillion other things to you and wishes.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you next time. Bye bye.
Oh, it was so nice.
Oh, thank you.